Today I'm going to talk about cutting mats. Cutting mats, there are a ton of options out there. Today I'm going to be talking about those self-healing cutting mats mostly, and how to get the most out of them and how to use them. If that's something you're interested in, stay tuned. Hi, I'm Wendy Haney, and this is my YouTube channel, and I'm interested in helping new quilters, beginning quilters, and experienced quilters get the most out of their quilting experience so they can enjoy it, not be intimidated by it, and be able to enjoy making quilts and giving them as gifts and enjoying that wonderful feeling of doing that. Okay, so cutting mats. There is one mat that I use that is called a pinnable mat, and I hadn't really realized that that was what it was called. It is not a self-healing mat. It is a big, very large mat. 56 by 33 is the one I have that it has measurements around. And the reason I got it was because I have a really large table space and I wanted it covered with a mat. And going out and buying a bunch of my olfa cutting mats to fit the space was going to be, well, that was going to get really expensive. So I picked them up at Joann Fabrics. They're kind of spendy, but I never pay full price. I always wait until I can get a 40 or 50% off coupon, and then I get them. What I have discovered with them is they aren't self-healing. They were really kind of meant for fabric sewers who are pinning on a table, and of course, even with those pins going through, you don't want to ruin your table underneath. So that's what they're for. And as you'll see in the image here, it does, you can see the marks. It wears. And I also discovered it's not necessarily the best thing for my rotary cutter, but I'm still going to be using them because I have a large table that I use when I want to square up my quilts, cut really long borders, excuse me, and those types of things. So it does come in handy, but I'm not using it any longer on my cutting table, which is where I do the majority of my cutting. My two favorite cutting mats are the olfa. This is what I grew up with, if you will say. Cost effective, is a great brand, works well, self-healing. Yep, that's what I used to use. But I've recently discovered the Martelli mat, and I'd heard really, really great reviews about it. They're a little bit higher price point than the olfa. I finally decided to get one and find out what all the hype was about. Wow. I really like it. One, I really like the purple color on it. The olfa is the green, and it's got your lines on one side, and the other side is blank. The other side is still self-healing, so you can definitely use both sides of the mat. The Martelli is lavender on the top, and it is yellow on the back. And some people talk about flipping them. Well, I've got the biggest version they make, which is 30 by 60. We ain't going to be doing a lot of flipping right now. I have found I love the lavender. Both of them are just kind of the, medium tone, so no matter what color fabric, for the most part, you're using on them, it works. You can see them, see lines, all of that, even if you're working with a darker fabric. So we've got that going on. The other thing I like about the Martelli is it has more lines through it. The olfa has just 1 inch marks. This has 1/2 inch marks. I'm really, really happy with it. So this is the one that's on my cutting table and that I'm going to use all the time. The Martelli comes in their self-healing mats come in 18 by 24, 26 by 38, and this one, which is 30 by 60. So, what size to get? So once you've kind of decided you're going to go with one or the other, then you've got a variety of sizes. Olfa also has a lot of, I didn't go out and figure out all the different sizes they have. Basically, they kind of have the same. They have a fold-up one. They also have a variety of swivel ones. This is a 12 by 12. This is 17 square. As you can see, they're in 2 pieces. And when they first come, they're rather stiff and you're thinking, wow, how is this going to work? But you know what? Once you get them loosened up, they're very, very handy. I like these basically, so I take them to quilt retreats when usually I'll take this one. It fits nicely to the one side of my sewing machine on my table for trimming up blocks and things as I'm working on them. Usually when I go to retreat, they have larger mats available for us to use, so I'm all taken care of there. Otherwise, I would take this one. This one is 35 by 23. The biggest thing with this is what I would suggest you do is at least have one mat that is at least about that 22-inch width. That way, you've got a mat that's large enough to cut a full width of fabric. Otherwise, you're going to be dealing with smaller, you're going to have to fold it over. And I'm just not partial to feeling I get a straight enough cut when I'm folding over and cutting 4 layers. So I always just do the half. The other thing is if you're butting multiple mats next to each other, where they butt up, you are likely to get a little, it's not going to quite cut as cleanly. So if you have the space and you can afford it, get a larger mat. So basically, whatever you can afford and have the space for, you'll be happy to spend, you'll be happier if you get the biggest size you can afford and have the space for, because there's nothing worse than wishing you had something bigger. It's just, bigger is better. Here's the other thing that's kind of a interesting thought, is whether to use the lines on the mat for cutting. When I first started quilting, I was pretty much told, no, 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 you do not use the lines on your cutting mat for cutting. Nope, they're not accurate enough, you need to use your ruler. So that's always what I've been doing, and I still really, really recommend that. But let's take a ruler. So if you were to take your ruler and you were to set it over the lines on the mat, you should find them all mapping up very, very nicely. So the lines on your ruler should cover up the lines on your cutting mat. Okay, here's the thing though. The lines on my ruler are narrower. They're really fine. They're meant for good accuracy. If we look at the lines on the mat, they're a little thicker. Granted, so let's see. We're going to go over here to the 5. Yeah, you might get by okay, but I'm one for, if you were to lay out your fabric, let's just lay this out. Let's see here, do it this way. If you were to just lay this out and thinking, oh, yeah, I'm going to line up my fabric on my line at the bottom, and then my line here, and then you're going to cut from another line. You're just lining up your bottoms and your tops. You really can't see the rest of that line in there. And it just, sorry, not partial to it. I will always recommend, these are nice when I want to go, oh, what size is this? Oh, yeah, it's blah, 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 blah. And I can easily tell that at a glance, but I am not going to cut my fabric based on my cutting mat. The other thing is, often with rulers can have a little bit of variance. So if you're starting at home and cutting on your mat here and using these lines for your cutting, and then you take your project somewhere else and use a different mat, or decide to start using your ruler, there could be small enough variances that over time that's going to show up in quilting pieces and things not going together quite as much as you'd like. So now you know my thoughts on the subject of using your lines on your cutting mat for cutting. Don't. But but they're handy to have. Okay, the other thing with your cutting mat is you need to take care of them. It doesn't like heat. So do not bring your iron over here and have a piece of fabric and start to iron. Nope, 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 not a good thing. You're going to end up with a warped cutting mat. Same goes for, you know, in the summer in Minnesota it gets kind of hot, and I drive up to a quilting retreat, and sometimes we get there a little early or we stop, and my cutting mat is in the car. Well, if that car gets really, really hot, I could have a problem with my mat. I usually make sure that my mat is laid evenly over the top of everything. I put it at the top, or I kind of bury it at the very bottom of everything so it's at the bottom. Whatever I do, I make sure it is laying flat in my car. And then I am pretty careful about not letting it be in the sun for an extended amount of time. And the opposite goes true because I live in Minnesota. You don't want it out there in freezing temperatures either, because it's kind of plasticky. It's made of little plastic particles, and that's why it's self-healing, is because you can take your rotary cutter over it, and it just kind of separates those little plastic particles, and then when your rotary blade extracts or is done, it kind of closes up again. So freezing temperatures, and if you grab that cutting mat, you could end up cracking it. So be careful of that as well. Storing it. If you're lucky to have a quilting space that you can just leave everything out, fabulous. That's kind of the way it is at my house. So my cutting mats are always laying flat. These, my olfa ones that are swivel ones, they're a little firmer, and they're usually in my quilting bag straight up, because the way they're made, they're not going to kind of warp the same way. If you don't have a place that you can leave your cutting mat out, I would suggest you finding a flat space for it. Under a table, under a bed, or some mats have a way to put a hanging hook on them such that you can hang them somewhere so they're straight up. Biggest thing is you don't want them so that they are like laying this way or warped and anything like that. You also don't want them near a heating vent. So all of that, you're going to want to take care of them. How your blades affect your cutting mat. I'm gonna put that over there. As I just mentioned, self-healing mats are made up of little plastic particles, and as you cut over them, your nice sharp blade separates those, and then when you're done, the little particles close up and it doesn't leave these grooves. It's another reason why I don't recommend using your grid lines for your cutting, because then if you're apt to doing a 2.5-inch cut all the time, you're cutting on the same line over and over. Well, if you're cutting on the same line over and over, even if it's a self-healing mat, you're gonna put more use and wear into one spot. So you're better off, like I do. You put it out here. It's over here this time, and I'm cutting, I cut it, and then I'm over here, and then when I've got a small piece of fabric, I just dump it down on my table. So you're putting your fabric down in a variety of haphazard places as you're cutting. Key thing, sharp blade. If you are working with a dull blade, you're more apt to wear out your mat as well, because with a dull blade, you're leaving bigger spaces, it's not going to heal as well, and you're going to be forcing fabric and stuff into your mat, because that will happen. I discovered, I don't know if you can see it here, I have little black fuzzies on my mat right now because I've been cutting black felt, and oops, probably should have replaced my blade ahead of time. No worries, we can get that handled and taken care of. So a sharper blade will make sure your mat lasts longer. The other thing is, as you cut, you want your blade to be at a 90 degree. 90 degrees this way. You don't want it at an angle. You don't want it there, because then if it's at an angle like this, you're kind of doing an angle into the rotary cutter mat, which has got those plastic particles, and it's not going to heal as well. So straight up, nice and even, 90 degrees, and then you'll make your mat last longer. There you go. I think I got the key points there for you, and now you can decide which mat is best for you. The size, the brand, whatever. Go out and get it, and then get good sharp blades in your rotary cutter, and you're going to be good to go. Take care. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch my video today. You can follow me by doing one, subscribing to this YouTube channel, hitting the bell icon on the subscribe button so you're notified every time I drop a new video. But you can also find me over on Facebook, Wendy J. Haney. So facebook.com/Wendy J. Haney. Also, I have a Facebook group for people that love needlework, books, wine, all sorts of things also. The name of the group is called Life Fulfilled, Quilting, Needlework, Wine. Basically, you can't miss it. It's facebook.com/group/Life Fulfilled. You'll be able to find it. You can also find me over on my website, wendyjhaney.com. Once again, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you being here, and I appreciate all your comments and feedback that you're providing me. Take care.